How many Premier League teams will play in European tournaments next season? This is insane. Look at this. As of late April 2026, the Premier League is guaranteed to have at least 8 to 9 teams in European tournaments for the 26-27 season. However, due to specific scenarios with Champions League spots, FA Cup results, and European competition winners, that number could potentially be 10 to 11. Half the Premier League table. That is insane. Key scenarios for 26-27 season: Champions League, 6 teams possible, top 5 positions, plus a potential 6th spot if Aston Villa or Nottingham Forest win the Europa League, while finishing outside the top 5. Now for the European League, 2 to 3 teams, is typically 6th place and the FA Cup winner, but these spots fluctuate based on final league position and winners. Conference League, 1 team, that's usually 7th place, depending on the league and FA Cup winners. Like, for example, if Arsenal were to win the Champions League, which they're not, their position would go to a team below them. So it'd be like the top 4, for example, and if Arsenal win it, it'd go to the team on 5th spot, and their European spot would go to the one below and below. You know what I'm trying to say? So in this video, what we're trying to figure out is why half of the Premier League teams will end up going to European tournaments next season. Let's start that video right now.
A decade or so ago, we only used to have about 5 Premier League teams going to European competitions every season, but that number has steadily increased through the years because of many factors. First, there was the introduction of the new UEFA Europa Conference League, which created a space for one more team to participate in European competitions per season, and then the Champions League and Europa League got expanded, allowing the possibility of more teams from stronger leagues to make it there. At the start of this season, we had 9 Premier League teams playing in the different European competitions, but next season that number could go up to 10. It sounds crazy, right?
Insane.
And we know a lot of you are asking how in the world that is possible. Well, you'll find out exactly how in this video. This is why half of the Premier League will be in Europe next season.
Football's more than a game. It's passion, pride, glory. This World Cup season, Goal90 brings you our biggest offer yet. Buy 3 and their shop. Passion. Own the moment before they're gone. Visit Goal90 shop. Link in the description.
First of all, it is already confirmed that the Premier League will get 5 Champions League slots next season, just like they did this season, thanks to the European performance spot. What this means is that teams that finish in the top 5 of the table this season will be going straight to UEFA's Premier competition ahead of the 2026-27 season. As things stand, that's going to be Arsenal, Manchester City, Manchester United, Aston Villa and Liverpool. Now, contrary to popular opinion, if Arsenal win the Champions League or Aston Villa win the Europa League, it actually doesn't affect anything. Obviously, winners of the Champions League and Europa League get a free passage to the Champions League the following season, regardless of their league position. However, if they do qualify through their league standings, their spots don't pass down the table. So Chelsea fans, there's no hope here. The team will have to fight a way to squeeze into that top 5 if they want to play in the Champions League next season. So if this doesn't happen, how then do we get half of the league going to Europe next season? We'll tell you in a second, but if you aren't yet subscribed to the channel, now is a good time to go do that so you never miss out on our amazing content. Done? Okay, let's get back to the video. Obviously, the Premier League gets 2 Europa League spots and then 1 Conference League spot, and this brings us up to 7. The Europa League spots go to whoever finishes 6th on the Premier League table, and then the winner of the FA Cup. If the winner of the FA Cup finishes in the top 5, then 6th and 7th will go to the Europa League. If this is the case, 8th would then go to the Conference League. Usually the winner of the EFL Cup gets the ticket to the Conference League, but seeing as Man City have won that trophy and are already guaranteed a place in the top 5, the Conference League ticket will now go to 7th or 8th on the table depending on who wins the FA Cup. So we have now accounted for 8 teams going to Europe, right? So where do the rest come from? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Nottingham Forest are currently down in 16th place and have no hope at all of finishing in the top 8, which means that they cannot qualify for any European competition via their league standing. However, having beaten Liga Portugal leaders Porto over 2 legs, they now find themselves in the semi-finals of the Europa League, which means that they have a chance of qualifying for the Champions League just by winning that competition.
That's
if
insane.
that happens, this would be the 2nd time in a row we will see a team battling relegation in the Premier League qualify for the Champions League the next season. Of course, This was exactly what happened with Spurs under Ange Postecoglou last
True.
season. But
True.
perhaps an even more interesting twist would be if Forest were to actually get relegated from the Premier League this season, but win the Europa League and secure Champions League qualification. What a madness that would be. Anyway, back to our calculation. If Forest can pull this off, and they currently have a 25% chance of doing so by the way, we'll have 9 Premier League teams in Europe next season, 6 of which will be playing in the Champions League. So where does the last one come from? Well, it comes from the Europa Conference League. Despite losing to Fiorentina in Italy a few days ago, Crystal Palace went through to the semi-finals of the Conference League thanks to their 3-0 first leg victory in London. They will now go on to play Shakhtar Donetsk for a place in the final. If they win that competition, they would secure automatic qualification for the Europa League next season. Now, despite currently sitting in 13th on the Premier League table, mathematically,
This is
Palace
crazy.
can still qualify for even the Europa League.
Premier
via the
League is the best
standings,
league in the
but
world.
It just looks quite unlikely, especially because they still have very tough fixtures. Between now and the end of the season, they will have to face Liverpool, Everton, Man City, and Arsenal in the
Wow.
league. So realistically, their best route to Europe next season is by winning the Conference League. And it would be a very sweet story if they managed to do that. You see, by virtue of having won the FA Cup last season, Crystal Palace should actually have been playing in the Europa League this season, but they were found to have been in violation of UEFA's multi-club ownership rules. The club's major shareholder at the time, John Textor, also owns Lyon, who had also secured qualification for the Europa League, and UEFA does not allow clubs who share the same owners to compete in the same competition, so Palace had to be demoted to the Conference League. It would feel like a blessing in disguise if they end up adding another trophy to their cabinet via that route, and then they'd still end up in the Europa League, which they would feel they deserve to be in last season.
Wait. If they win that trophy, they'll have one more. They'll have a European trophy, and Arsenal don't.
And if you're a Palace fan, don't worry, there won't be a repeat of last summer's happenings this time. If Palace can win the Conference League this season and qualify for the Europa League, there won't be a demotion because John Textor, who still owns Lyon, has already sold his stakes in Crystal Palace to Woody Johnson, so both clubs can now compete in the same UEFA competition again. Anyway, that is exactly how half the Premier League can be competing in European competitions next season. That's just crazy. For context, as things stand, La Liga can have a maximum of 7 teams in European competitions next season, but the Premier League could be sending 10. And as it stands, it looks like it's going to be Arsenal, Man City, Man United, Aston Villa, Liverpool, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, Brentford, and maybe Leeds or Everton, depending on how things pan out in the FA Cup. Of course, this is great for the league in that there will now be more representation and more chances for English clubs to win trophies. We'll also agree that having that many teams going to Europe is testament to the quality and strength of the league, that even mid-table Premier League clubs can dominate different continental competitions. But it also makes the schedules a lot tighter. Remember that England is the only one of the Big 5 leagues that still has 2 domestic cups. If half of the teams in the league are now competing in 4 different competitions, we might start to see more injuries and fatigue, which could ultimately affect the quality of the games we start to see from these teams. But hey, it is not all set in stone just yet. If Forest don't win the Europa League and Palace don't win the Conference League, then England will have to settle for 8 teams in Europe next season, which
That's
is
still
still
a lot.
quite a lot when you
Still a
think
lot.
about it. But the bottom line is that there is a real possibility that we'll see half the Premier League playing across Europe's 3 competitions next season, and we want to know what you guys think about it. Is that good for the league? Is it bad?
That is insanely good. Insanely good. Is your team gonna go play? Are you excited for this? I am, bro. Hey, this is amazing.